Greg, thanks for taking time to chat with me today.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So before we get started, I was wondering if you could give me and give the listeners, the viewers, a little bit of a more of a background on the VMware Carbon Black relationship and what Carbon Black does.
Yeah, for sure. So VMware Carbon Black, we're a endpoint security company focused on essentially agent-based security. So we look at endpoint detection and response, next-gen antivirus, and then live query, basically live ops, which is what we go out and gather proactive information from hosts. So really focused on protecting endpoints, protecting servers, and really trying to lay the groundwork with rules and development that really help organizations secure their infrastructure from the bottom to the top.
So I know we're going to get into this a little bit with the questions later, but I have to ask you up front, with the VMware acquisition of Carbon Black and with a lot of people touting EDR as the new MDR, what's your opinions on that? Is EDR the new face of managed cybersecurity?
Yeah, for sure. And so like EDR, I'm glad you asked that, because EDR is something where, I think that was a technology that kind of reshaped the industry, if you will. I remember years ago, back when I was doing like incident response and forensics, where we would just have like raw log data to look at. And we had to kind of piece everything back together and build this timeline to understand, what actually happened in this attack. EDR kind of took this different approach to security and endpoint security in particular, in terms of just continually recording all process activity on the endpoint. So it's kind of like, putting a video camera and just seeing, I don't care if this is good or bad. We're just going to record all this data and have it stored so that later we can process it. We could use it for evidence. And that led to building these rules on top of it that allowed us to do a lot more contextual analysis and contextual alerting based off of, we saw this happen, then this happened, then this happened. It kind of expanded things at the time. I want to say, what was it, like 10 years or so, this was first coming out. Back then it was just signature based. Most endpoint detection was just focused on, is this a bad thing or a good thing? Kind of, black and white. But really, what we saw in terms of security and what hackers are doing, it's all in that gray area. Like when you break into a company, you don't want to be detected right away. So you're not going to be running exploits. You're not going to be doing a lot of things that would give away your presence. So traditionally, you're going to start trying to blend in and really look like you belong on that network, maybe like acting like an employee or a service account or something. So, EDR came in and really allowed us to gain that additional visibility without as much headache. And now, with EDR, the problem was it's complicated, right? Not everyone understands the details of what processes are doing. And, it takes a very, very special skill set and a lot of time to just really dive in and fully understand that. So to help with that, MDR has really come out from a lot of different places. We have partners that do managed detection and response. We also have a managed detection and response team at VMware Carbon Black called ThreatSight. And basically, they're that additional layer on top of our tooling that allows them to, elevate these risks and really dive in and, make sense of what's happening and then, report this out to our customers. So it kind of is that glue between the deep technical kind of dirty details and then the high level like summary that is really important to, say, a manager of a security program.
Yeah, I mean, that's no matter how great the tool is, it's that never-ending tuning, whitelisting, blacklisting. You have to always be doing that and staying on top of threat intelligence. That doesn't change. You need that human intervention, at least until AI takes over, right?
Yeah, exactly. Once that happens, we'll all be out of a job, right?
Exactly. Well, I appreciate that. It's a great background. Can you give me a little bit of your background and what you do there today and what you've done in your past experiences that's brought you to where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. So I got into security, many moons ago. I used to work for the federal government, basically doing application security and security event monitoring. From there, I got into pen testing and ethical hacking. That was a pretty fun time in my career. I consulted for a while. I got to go, do physical break-ins to companies and electronic break-ins, and got to kind of see that whole side of the consulting business, which really helped kind of round my skill sets out after coming from a defensive sort of angle, just going full into the offensive side. It's eye-opening how different those are, right? But at the same time, they all kind of have to line up at some level. You have to understand a little bit about each to do either one of them well, I think. And so, after consulting, I ended up working at Logarithm, where I started out on the research side. So that was my first jump into like security research. I got to work a lot on, building integrations with different products, making rules for the Logarithm SIM. And from there, I ended up founding and creating the internal security program at Logarithm. It was something where we kind of had a piecemeal approach up until that point, where we had people from professional services, from labs, which is like the R&D arm, all these different groups kind of trying to do different parts of security. We actually decided to establish that as a whole program and really build this out as something more official that had, a throat to choke, which was mine essentially. uh, but it was great, right? A great experience to really, understand how to build out a program and look at things from a much higher level than, how my whole background up to that point was very much into the weeds and figuring out the technical details of things. So along that line, as we were building out this program, one of the tools that we actually brought on to our program that I found to be one of the most impactful for our whole program, especially being a security information event monitoring company, was Carbon Black. And so, back in this time, Carbon Black was still a standalone company. They hadn't purchased Confer yet, so they didn't have that antivirus component. So we were some of their original EDR customers. And that tool was one of the main data points we had across our whole network, where we were able to aggregate all this data from all these systems and then parse all that into the SIM. So I actually wrote the Logarithm integration for Carbon Black. And so I got to know, the business development folks and everything. And just from that, from working with them for many years and really getting to know those people, opportunity came up. They built an office out here in Boulder. And so, when that happened, I went and reached out and was like, hey, like, are you guys looking for people on research side? And fortunately they were looking to grow that program, and we still are. It's been a great kind of process, coming from one vendor to another. Because I still get to work with Logarithm still, helping out with integrations, but on this side of the aisle. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of, how I got to, where I am now. And now I work on the applied research team. We're essentially behind all of the rules that you see within the Carbon Black product line today. Which is kind of fun. We get to figure out how to bypass our products and, find out all the different things that attackers could do to get around our stuff. And then our group is essentially on the hook for remediating those issues.
Absolutely. It's funny. So you bring up like physical pen testing, that stuck out of my mind only because as a podcast listener, I frequent this show called Darknet Diaries, and he has physical pen testers on. You've heard of that? Yeah, quite a bit. So do you have any interesting stories of your physical pen testing days? Any close calls?
Oh man.
That you can share.
Fortunately, fortunately we never got caught. Knock on wood, right? But yeah, Darknet Diaries, I'm a fan as well. They've had some real cool engagements on there. A lot of real interesting stories as well, especially on the physical security side.
Right.
Let's say one of mine was probably one of the funner ones was, back when I was in the government side of things, and I started getting into the red team side. One of my first engagements there was actually we were tasked to go spy on a meeting that was happening in Washington, D.C. That one of our leaders from our organization was out there along with leaders from the other organizations. So we went out there, cased out the building that we knew they'd be meeting in and everything. And, it was back when Wi-Fi was kind of a big target for us. So they had web networks at the time. So it was very easy to compromise these networks. So we actually ended up, without going into too many details, we found the access point that they would all be using for this meeting because we had some inside information. We ended up compromising that access point just sitting in a car outside the building. And then we ended up staging some malware through a pop-up. So basically a guest access kind of pop-up that would come up. Once they clicked that, it would force them to install something. We ended up hacking all of the laptops in this room, and we were just sitting in our car listening and recording the conversations going on. So
Oh, that's
that was a
awesome.
pretty fun one. Yeah,
I'm sure you got many more. We'll save that when we invite you on to the hashtag show one of these days.
that sounds good. Need to
Let's
figure out which ones I can share.
Yeah, exactly. I don't get you in trouble. Let's
Right.
uh let's jump into today's line of questions. So just to preface this for everyone, you know, I've been seeing the marketing hysteria around the coronavirus, not just in cybersecurity, but across every industry. It's kind of really bananas the way things are going. And so I've been having discussions internally in my organization and wanted to reach out to some of our partners to get a different take on how what they're seeing and how they're responding. So what's changed for you, personally and for your organization with this the coronavirus epidemic and this work from home change?
Yeah. I mean, coronavirus is much like other various kind of very serious events that have happened. In terms of how attackers choose to run with it. We're seeing a lot of scams pick up in terms of coronavirus themed domains being registered and people trying to trick people and scam them out of money, like fake stimulus packages being sent to people and stuff like that. So, on the security side, we see all the typical kind of scam stuff that comes with any major crisis, which is awful. People targeting people at their worst times, really going after them when they're vulnerable, when they're worried and scared. That's when attackers tend to strike, which is unfortunate. But aside from that, in the work from home, virtualization kind of side of things, that it's been a crazy shift, I think, for so many different companies. For us, particularly, Carbon Black, we've been working remotely for quite some time now. So we weren't too affected by this directly. Like my whole team, we have people based in Japan, Malaysia, Europe, all over the United States. So we have people kind of all over. So we were kind of used to working remotely. VMware was more of a company that liked to have people come into the office and like to, have people have that face to face kind of interaction. So it's funny seeing them kind of take this big shift to making sure everyone's working from home, that they're all able to, that they have the resources to do so. So, this has changed the whole industry, not just for us. I think us in tech are probably more well versed and more ready to do this than a lot of people in other industries. There's a lot of people out there who don't have equipment at home from their employers, but they also can't go get their equipment from the office for whatever reason. So, they're in this weird kind of gray area where, like, how do they do their work? How do they actually get into their work documents and things? Like, if the company didn't even have a VPN before, they're all trying to figure out how to rapidly stand up a lot of these different services. And there's no cookie cutter way to do this. It's so different for every industry. Every company has various different needs. They're going to have different types of employees. They're going to be physically in different places. So it adds all these different layers of complexity. So a lot of what we're doing is just giving people general high level resources about here's some helpful open source tools that you can use to deploy new technologies within your infrastructure for free, so that you don't have to worry about the cost as well as you're shifting of your employees. Like Carbon Black, one of the main things we did was we actually lifted the limit on our agents. So right now you can actually deploy unlimited agents, and we're not going to charge you for any of that. We just want people to be able to protect, all of these assets they're going to be connecting into their environments. So there's various different ways we can approach this.
I'm seeing a lot of offers like that. That's very interesting. You guys are doing that. I commend you guys. I applaud you guys for making that effort and putting that out there. I mean, are you seeing that? This leads to my next question. Sort of. Are you seeing that that's one of the pain points your customers are dealing with? Is it is that helping to solve that, or what other pain points are you seeing, and how are they addressing them?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that's a big one, right? If people are especially going to be using personal devices to connect to a network, from a essentially unsecured network. If your company is dealing with sensitive information, like you're a bank or financial institution or healthcare or something like that, there's a lot of actual laws around how people are able to access this information and what devices they can use. So, if you're allowing people just to go in and access this stuff from a system that's a home use computer that could have malware and stuff like that on it, that could create a lot of additional issues for that organization. The problem is it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like, do we want to be putting EDR agents on personal devices too? Because then you can see everything that they're doing on personal devices. So it gets into
Privacy
those.
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Especially if you're decrypting SSL and things like that, for people using their banking and stuff like that. All things that these different companies have to think about, and they have to approach, not just from a security and risk angle, but a legal and compliance angle to make sure, they're not opening the floodgates for later legal recourse for something because of this pandemic too. So we're in some interesting times right now.
Absolutely. I mean, you're hitting on some of the stuff I wanted to ask you actually during this discussion already. But you know, how does the challenge around? I mean, this is you just kind of touched on this, but let's expand a little further. How has the challenge around monitoring endpoints changed with the remote work? Other than just the personal device side of it.
Right. Especially if people, traditionally had their infrastructure set up to do things such as like, Windows event forwarding, or they have everything set up in such a way where all the events are designed to be sent in an enclosed intranet kind of environment. All of a sudden, all that's gone, right? You have people connecting in from wherever. They're using personal devices with probably not being on the VPN. So they might not even have a direct line of sight to connect and send data into their central logging infrastructure or their other endpoint solutions. So, like Carbon Black, fortunately, the way we've always approached this is our solution is cloud based. So it's designed to be hosted on the internet, so that no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, people can connect in and the data will be pushed up to that central server. So, regardless of where these people are in the world, you still will be able to collect this data, store it, be able to analyze it, and essentially respond to it. The funny thing we always used to see was, when I was working for Logarithm, we were very much a like come to the office kind of company. So a lot of our rules were set up in that way, right? We still had a Carbon Black hosted on the internet though. So no matter what people did, the data would come in and we would see it there. Even if they're offline, the data gets stored. And then once you connect again, it's pushed up. So either way, the data gets out one way or another. And so the funniest thing we always used to see was people would go, they'd be doing stuff online, maybe disconnect the VPN, go do some stuff they probably shouldn't do on their work computer, and then reconnect the VPN. Is the funniest thing because we would have this whole trail of like that whole activity log in the data. We didn't do anything about it really, unless it was like a legal compliance kind of issue.
Mhm.
But it's still just kind of a funny thing to see, where people don't really realize, like, once you do these things like deploy work, whatever type of agents your organization uses, once you have those on like a personal asset or you're using a work asset for personal things, you have to really look at, like whatever you do on this system, you got to make sure that everyone would be okay seeing what you've done, kind of thing. That's always
Yeah,
the approach I take, at least.
absolutely. Yeah, it's the move to the cloud even more so now, right? I mean, it's even more of an impact. Um,
Definitely.
what are you seeing? Your customers. Is there any common trends that you see them implementing right now to mitigate this risk? Do you have any do's or don'ts you put out there for the viewers?
Yeah, for sure. The big one I would say, for all of these services that people are standing up for external access into their company, whether it's VPNs, whether they're using web services, or however they're kind of standing up these different controls, really need to look into enabling multi-factor authentication. Probably one of the most pervasive attacks that we see across all the malware families that we've looked at is credential stuffing. And that's essentially, stealing credentials from local systems. The malware is running on their box. They'll pull credentials from memory. A lot of different malware will do keystroke logging. And, what we're seeing with this after the data is stolen is they're doing multiple different things with this data in order to create additional revenue streams. So one of the things is they'll actually sell direct access to systems on the darknet. So you can go and buy, say, remote desktop access into a computer within a target organization that you want to break into, or maybe just a personal home system that you could use as a launching point to do other stuff. And the crazy part is these systems and credentials are often going for as little as like $2 to $4. So, pretty cheap way to break into companies. But the credential stores are the big ones. If you get valid, good credentials for people, especially if it can be married up with email accounts, social security numbers, stuff like that, that's where we see those credentials being used in credential stuffing across tons of different sites. You'll see them take that email account, that password, and go try it across thousands of sites in the automated fashion. So multi-factor authentication, I would say, should be like number one. Of course, there are ways to bypass multi-factor. There are attacks against users that involve, tricking people into approving push requests and stuff. But it is one of the best controls that people can implement. So I would say, multi-factor authentication, number one. Really look at locking down all these different services that are critical to your business. And then, looking at secure tunnels, making sure people have a way to securely access resources, through VPN. You could even set up tunnels with SSH for your more technical folks. Just really depends on the needs of the business. But those would be my top two, really looking at, multi-factor and then secure tunnel access back into the corporation.
Perfect. That's right in line with what I've been hearing. So
Yeah.
words of wisdom. So let's chat about going forward. We've all been remote, not just here in the United States. I mean, globally now, for a month or so now, and who knows how much longer it's going to go on. When things do quote unquote go back to normal, how do you see the landscape of cybersecurity changing from this event?
Right. And that's going to be an interesting one, right? I think, projections of this thing, they're saying this could go anywhere from another month to another like 3 to 4 months. So, I mean, the longer I think we do this, it's going to suck a lot to miss summer, being inside and stuff. But really, once people realize like they can still work remotely, they can actually probably get more stuff done from home than they would in the office. I don't know about you, but that's my case. Like when I go into the office, that's when I just like see people and stuff. And when I'm at home, I can just like focus and dive into stuff. So for me, I'm more productive, but that's definitely not the way a lot of people are. A lot of people, have the complete opposite. So right now, people are struggling with that, really understanding, one of the issues that came up just within our own company is a lot of people now that they had a great setup in the office. They would come in, they had their nice desktop, they had all their stuff out. And then now they're at home, they can't go back to the office because, we're deep cleaning, locking it down kind of stuff. So now they're at home just on a laptop. They have kids running around the house, and like my kids are here. They're doing homeschool now, and so you have all these different externalities that are really affecting their ability to do their day-to-day job on top of their day-to-day job. Plus, just the stress of following the news and understanding, what's happening across the world is really, really throwing people for a loop too. So I think, once people get more into the swing of this and really start to get more comfortable working remotely, I think it's really going to open a lot of people's eyes to the fact that, it's okay to work from home, especially in a lot of different industries. People are going to realize kind of like, okay, this isn't as scary as I thought. I was actually talking to one of my friends who's a special agent, and they're actually working from home. Is kind of interesting. So even the bureau has people doing their stuff from home, aside from like classified stuff, I'd imagine. So like everyone's really facing this new normal, which I think is going to have a drastic impact on the world as we know it once people can, have that opportunity to go back. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people just want to stay working from home, and just continue kind of doing what they've been doing. So I don't know. I think that's a big question that's up in the air to see really, what happens when people do go back to that new normal.
Yeah, I mean, from a cyber perspective, it's just going to mean more of what we've been talking about. More visibility required, policies and procedures, two-factor, those kind of things are going to be continue to be more and more important as
Mhm.
people continue to be more and more remote.
Yeah, and I think all those controls should just be standard anyway. Regardless of whether you're in the office, whether you're remote. But I think now it's really going to force that discussion. A lot of people are really understanding like the need to see additional security measures because of the new normal of working from home. So I definitely agree.
Absolutely. Okay, so last question on this train of thought. How does this remote work, this shift, how does this change the carbon black solution?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for us, it's not going to change things a whole lot. We were positioned well, just to support endpoints, no matter where they reside in the world. So I think for us, it's going to continue going the way it has been. I think now that we're under the VMware umbrella, that's only going to expand it. They're going to give us additional resources, maybe make it easier for people to integrate our software. One of the things we're looking at with VMware now is how do we more seamlessly integrate our tooling with the VMware infrastructure. We don't want to have it be something where people have to install an agent, configure, and stuff like that. We want it to be like, when you're standing up a virtual machine, click a checkbox, Carbon Black is enabled, you load your default configuration and have it just run with it. We want it to be very seamless and transparent to the end users and make it as easy for them to use as possible, and also make it as easy to manage on the back end as possible. So having that cloud native kind of deployment, fortunately, we've just been moving in that direction already. So I think this is going to be really, beneficial for us as more people have to focus on finding these cloud solutions to do endpoint security, to do these various other needs that they have for their business. So for us, I think it's just going to be continuing to move in that direction, and then maybe look at taking some of our traditional on-prem solutions and looking at how maybe we can make these into something that's more baked into our cloud offerings as well.
Greg, I really appreciate you sharing everything with me. You really gave me a different, more focused endpoint perspective. And before we finish for today, I wanted to ask you if you had any parting words. It could be cybersecurity or anything you want to say.
Oh man, well, thanks so much for having me on, Chris, and really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and just discuss these issues that I think are going to be a very new to a lot of people, both inside our space and outside of it. So all I have to say is stay safe and hope everyone comes out of this on the other side as unscathed as possible.